Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, and especially your husbands. You can follow me on X, Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. On Snapchat, Mick, your host with the most, or BMouth60, and on TikTok, Mad Mickey's World. It is not my problem if you're offended with anything I post on social media. That's your problem for being cotton wool buds. So welcome to the most handsome, sexiest, hottest YouTuber talking about entertainment on the planet. Before you start commenting saying, "You're ugly, dude," who's better looking? Me or John Campion? Me or Matt Ramos? Soups, right? Think about every single DC YouTuber. None of them have got my X appeal. We all know it. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Hollywood, you need to stop blaming Superman for bad Superman movies. It is not Superman's fault that Superman 3 and Superman 4 weren't as good as Superman 78. That's down to the Salkinds and their hubris and their arrogance firing one of the greatest directors in human movie history. It is not Superman's fault that Superman Returns is a flop. That's down to the studio. That's down to the director. They deleted the Return to Krypton sequence, one of the most beautiful moments in Superman cinematic history. It is not Superman's fault that Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice didn't make $1 billion. I love those two movies, but there are logical reasons why those movies were divisive and why they didn't reach $1 billion. Now, the studio wanted BVS to make $2 billion. Why am I talking about this? Because if Superman is released and is hated by the public and critics and flops, the first thing that Gunn, Saffron and WB and all their comic book artists and writers shills that are simping this movie are going to say, well, Superman is such a hard character to write. He's too powerful. He's an alien. This is the biggest bullshit and bollocks you will ever hear. When I tell people that I've written a Superman movie script and I say that the Elite, Manchester Black and Metallo are the villains, and I tell them that there's flashbacks to Superman's origins during the Second World War, where the Allies are trying to pressure him to kill Hitler, and the Nazis, people are saying to me, wow, Mick, that's amazing. When I say maybe, in another version of a script, maybe the baby Kal-El doesn't arrive on Earth. He arrives on Wonder Woman's fantasy island, and they grow up with each other and fall in love, then go to Metropolis. Maybe it's about time to make a Superman movie and a Superman story where it's not Lois and Clark yet again. Maybe it's time to think outside of the box. Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer thought outside the box. What's his name? Todd Helbing, who was running Superman and Lois, the TV show, thought outside the box. It was a very different type of Superman series and Superman story. Smallville, Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, who devised Smallville, came up with a very different type of pre-Superman story. I love storytellers who think outside the box and not going to give me the same old shit. Because here's the problem today. TV show writers and creatives and movie writer-directors don't think of the audience's perspective when they're making a movie. Even your Christopher Nolans, or your Denis Villeneuves, or your Zack Snyder, those auteurs think from their own perspectives, not an audience. And that's why they get some problems creatively. Now, we saw, what is it called, Christopher Nolan's brand new movie teaser trailer yesterday, The Odyssey. Now, everyone's having an orgasm and masturbating over the IMAX cameras and the pixels, but I don't care about IMAX cameras and pixels. What I care about are performances. What I care about is character development. What I care about is storytelling. And what I saw from that teaser underwhelmed me. Now, a lot of people are getting angry with me about that. They're saying it's Christopher Nolan, Mick. Oh my God, Mick, it's Christopher Nolan. I don't give a shit, right? I didn't like the dialogue. I don't know if that comes from some text somewhere, right? I don't care, right? So if the dialogue's from whatever that comes from, because I know jack shit about the Odyssey, but again, like I said to you with Superman, it's the expulsion of that dialogue. That's the problem. I wasn't feeling the way they were saying the dialogue. And another problem with that Odyssey movie, he's cast too many well-known actors for that movie, and that's a problem. Trying to give some of his famous mates Oscar-worthy moments and performances. People are going to love that film because it's Christopher Nolan, and I love Chris Nolan. You know, I'm always complaining we don't have enough great movie makers and storytellers today. But I was very underwhelmed by what I saw. Back to Superman. Anyway, so the reason I'm saying this is, so basically this is what's going to happen. If Superman flops, Gunn, Saffron, and all the comic book writers and artists who are shilling this movie and them are going to blame Superman. It is not Superman's fault if you can't do the most easiest thing ever and make a great Superman movie. And seeing that I've seen Gunn's Superman movie, I can tell you, in my opinion, he hasn't made a great Superman movie. Just before the movie's released, I'm going to say one thing, just in case you people want to own me, if it makes big box office, because bad movies, right, can make lots of box office. I mean, look at all the MCU movies that made a lot of money during Phase 2 and Phase 3. A lot of those movies were utter shite. Let's be honest about it. And let's not pretend anything else. I loved Infinity War, but I thought Endgame was just a bunch of waste of time padding. It never needed to be 3 hours long. And the same people who loved that movie claim that Zack Snyder's Justice League shouldn't have been 4 hours long. But it needed to be, with what Snyder was doing. And that extended movie needed to be as long. But Endgame was only 3 hours long to create hype. To talk about the 3 hours, what should you do? Should they take a toilet break? Should they have a wee-wee break? Do you remember all that bollocks and nonsense, right? So, this is what they're going to do. If Superman flops, they're going to blame the character, as they always do. They say Superman isn't relatable. He's relatable to me and hundreds and thousands of immigrants and refugees around the world, because Superman is the ultimate immigrant and refugee. But has anyone touched on that really in live action? No, never. I think it's an interesting thing, right? With all this talk today about illegal immigration and all the racism and bigotry that goes along with that, I think Superman being the ultimate immigrant would be good commentary. But you have to do good commentary in a good way. It can't feel like lecturing the public, and that's why they call a lot of these films woke today. So you just wait and see. You're going to say, Mick, have you been to the future? How do you know these people are going to blame Superman if Superman flops? Because I know these fucking people, and they're as predictable as night following fucking day. And this is what they're going to do, because they can never hold their hands up and say, we made a mistake. Why do you think they keep on talking about toxic fandom? Imagine I go into a supermarket, I bought a mouldy piece of fucking cheese, and I take it back to the manager and he goes, you're a toxic customer. That would never happen. But Hollywood like to blame their own customers for their creative bankruptcy and political, social propaganda and extremism, right? It's never their fault. Now, in the old days, when a movie flopped, when Kevin Costner's Waterworld flopped, which was a brilliant movie, but it flopped. It had a lot of production problems. It didn't work for the public, and that's fine. Kevin came out, put his hands up. His Western epic he just did hasn't done very, very well. He's held his hands up, but he still wants to make the next movie, and that's okay as well. He has every right. Kevin Costner has earned the right to do whatever he fucking wants, right? But in the old days, old Hollywood were just as problematic behind the scenes as new Hollywood is today. Nothing's changed today. Me Too and Time's Up have changed nothing. And I can promise you that. But the one good thing about old Hollywood is that all their illicit behaviour was hidden behind the scenes, and they didn't behave like that in public. Like the guy from Cobra Kai publicly biting a fucking actress. You know, that would never happen back in the day. Now, I don't agree with the illicit shit that used to go on behind the scenes in Hollywood, but at least they acted like ladies and gentlemen publicly. And let's talk about Mr. James Gunn in an interview. Again, he doesn't like being criticised, so he gives this analogy of the fans being a 12-year-old boy from India. Now, if you don't think that's racist, if you don't think that's bigoted, then take a look at your fucking self. But apparently it's all right for the bestest director ever to say whatever he wants. But if I said that on this video, right, I would be deplatformed. If I said that on X, Twitter, TikTok or Snapchat, I would be deplatformed, right? But not the bestest director ever. But he's not the bestest director ever. He wouldn't even be Quentin Tarantino's bagman or runner in the 90s. This guy isn't the bestest director ever. He's not. He's bang smack average. I like his movies. Right? They're okay. His Guardians movies are okay. His Suicide Squad movie is okay. He's good at doing that shit. But this, my friends, is Superman. Superman, the first superhero. And James Gunn never wanted to write and direct this movie. He was pressured into it. He basically, in a roundabout way, has admitted this. You can't do that. You can't be running between the sound stages of Peacemaker 2 and Superman. It's so utterly unprofessional. You can't put together a shitty flying sequence that even a 12-year-old director could do better at, and then admit publicly you never checked it over before it was released for its sponsorship, before people and audiences saw it. Now he claims he's redone it and it's better, and it still looks fucking shit. This is a director who does flying with the actor's hands basically down by side. It doesn't work, and some people have tried to cope with it. It doesn't work because the focus becomes on the face and the face becomes bigger. Basically, there's something else I want to say. James Gunn's Superman is the worst photographed Superman I've ever seen. Superman 78, beautifully photographed. Like Superman 2, Superman 3, even Superman 4 photographs Superman more beautifully than James Gunn's Superman. Same with Superman Returns, same with Smallville, same with Lois and Clark, same with Superman and Lois. Even George Reeves' series that was back in the 50s photographs Superman with, with the lack of techniques that they had back then, better than James Gunn. I've never seen Superman look so ugly than he has done in James Gunn's Superman. And you don't have to have seen this movie again. All you have to do is see the ugly, hideous shooting of Superman. What's gone wrong, James? Now, obviously, we can say, well, his other movies have been okay. His shooting and, his cinematography is normally okay. But in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, we saw even then that this guy cannot film flying. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you can't do something as a director, you bring in really good cinematographers and photographers and camera people to help you. But today these people are so arrogant because they do think they're better than their forefathers. They do think that they're smarter than the material. And I'll repeat what Dick Donner said with Superman 78 again. With Superman, you can't think you're smarter or better than the material. You've got to get inside of the material, and these people think they're better than Superman. We've seen David Cornsworth in clips with Nick Holt making fun of the fact that he's wearing basically his his pants outside of his trousers or whatever it is, right? Gunn's already said that these characters are stupid and silly, right? You may think that, right? But we don't. We don't think they're stupid. Stories matter. Comics matter. Films matter. They lift us up. When I was a young boy and my family didn't fucking understand me and they looked down on me because I was dyslexic and I had learning problems and I was shy and I couldn't talk till I was 2 years old, the only thing that helped me were films and television. If it wasn't for films and television, I would have offed myself as a kid. There's no question about that. So films and entertainment matter. They're not just movies. They're not just TV shows. There's so much more than that. Unfortunately, the WANKERSs, should I just say the word, wankers running Hollywood and entertainment, running English-speaking Western entertainment, don't believe that. At least old Hollywood actually loved entertainment. What a shame that people making entertainment today don't actually love it.